show quite a bit. I mean, I would argue to say every week. Every week we talk about go past the headlines, read your own, look for stats more than headlines, right? So this is from Logan Motoshami. He's at housingwire.com. And the headline is beware of gloom and doom housing market headlines. So hopefully this article will get to people, other than the actual doom and gloom headlines. But with Halloween in the rearview mirror, we still have one more spook to survive in 2020. And no, I'm not talking about the upcoming election. Sorry, I had to read that from his article. He's very witty.
He didn't know.
Yeah. He is talking about, and this is written from Logan's point of view, obviously. He's talking about the housing market crash headlines. The housing data has been wild this year. We've seen waterfall declines and parabolic rebounds. Love that word. These dramatic peaks and valleys, and by the way, I mean rebounds. I love that word. I'm a Lakers fan. I don't know. These dramatic peaks and valleys have fed the demons of greed and fear that infest the minds of our extreme housing bulls and housing market bears, leading to equally wild speculations about the future of U.S. housing. With all these dramatic people espousing their housing market takes, how is a reasonable person to know what to believe? And it was either last week's show or the week before where, like, imagine all these, you're just trying to buy a house and it's like, don't buy a house right now. And then Susie Orman's like, wait until everything crashes. Cause if you buy, your house is going to be worth half in 2 months. Like, what are they supposed to read? And he essentially says, fortunately, there's a way to stay sane.
The Bearded Men of Real Estate show.
Exactly. He actually mentions that in the article. It's pretty crazy. Not to like pop my collar here, but he actually wrote this article. He called me and then I called Ray and he said, can I write an article about you guys? We said, sure. So
all the time.
That's being sardonic if you guys didn't know that. But he said, fortunately, there's a way to stay sane. Following some fundamental housing data trends will keep you on the straight and narrow path of reality and immunize you against the outlandish flights of fancy put forward by our extremist friends. So he goes by take pending home sales index, for example. So in April of this year, pending home sales had its worst print of the 21st century. And it literally went down, just an extreme. I don't know if you have the article up.
Yeah.
Went extremely down. But 2 months ago, it was more than up above where it started after it stopped in April, which we know what happened in April. So this slight blip downward at the time, and it was a very quick downward. So when we look at the history of this, it's not this incredible crash that lasted for years. It lasted for a couple months, and actually didn't. It lasted for about a month and then slowly and then quickly went straight up, like Melissa said, right?
V-shaped recovery, some might say.
That's a very skinny V shape if you're looking at that headline or that actual graph on housingwire.com. This slight blip downward at the top of that chart led several people to say there were cracks in the housing market. There are several problems with this thesis. Not the least of these problems is that it's the second best print in this century. I think housing data, and this is from the writer, I think housing data will moderate, but this wasn't the moderation that he's talking about. Remember, pending home sales are forward-looking, and the data is saying that housing demand is still good year over year, especially. We do it every week on the show. There's at least 2 or 3 articles where we say, oh, it's down. Yep. Oh, but it's up exponentially year over year. So like,
I tried to accentuate that more than normal this week, knowing that this headline was coming. But if you'll listen to our show, we always talk about that. The weekly numbers show some seasonality, but then the annual numbers show the real growth.
The real growth. And, it's not this crazy growth that, it's just the doom and gloom. So if you guys want, go over to housingwire.com in this one. Check out Logan's article. He's got more. Ray's got it on the screen right now for those of you watching. And you can actually see charts. And he says why you should go. Essentially, he says what we do every week on the show. Go past the headlines. Look for the stats. Look for the facts. Look for the real truths behind all this. Because we live in a world where people see a headline there. Oh, housing market's going to crash. And then they take that as a truth in their head and spread it out. No, I saw this article. It says the housing market's going to crash.
Yeah.
But then if you read it, it says housing market's going to crash. And it said there's a dip in pending home sales by 1%, but it's up 50.2% over the year.
Yeah.
So it's just, so this is just an article mirroring what Ray and I do here on the show. And we've done for 122 episodes for the last 3 years.
122 episodes. And if you like our episodes, be sure to go to YouTube and subscribe, because that subscriber count we look at and we celebrate every subscriber that we have, every little tick up in that number. We're like, hey!
I do a shot for every new subscriber. So when we hit the thousands and the millions, it's gonna be
a lot of shouts. But we also take a look at the comments on there too. So if you're commenting on the show or on the Be More Chops, we can jump into those comments and have the discussion with you in the future. So be sure to subscribe to that. Check out the podcast if you haven't already. You can just tell your, I don't want to say it.
I know. Wait, here, let me try
the word. If you say the word Alexa, Echo, or computer, it all works. Let
me just try. Let me see what it does. Alexa, play the Bearded Man of Real Estate show.
There you go. So now you just activated it on everyone.